I want you to just imagine a woman walking down the street, and she's carrying this truly massive handbag.
Oh, right. The legendary purse.
Yeah, exactly. But if you were to actually look inside that bag, you wouldn't just find, the usual stuff, keys, wallet, whatever. You would find something that she explicitly referred to as her lie box.
Her lie box, which is just such a great phrase.
It's incredible. And inside this box are two entirely separate checkbooks bearing two completely different last names. There are prescription pill bottles, right? Also issued to two different names from doctors on opposite sides of the country.
It's wild to even think about the logistics of that.
And perhaps most incredibly, there's this intricate, highly organized system of index cards.
Right, the index cards.
And the sole purpose of these cards, it was just to help her keep her simultaneous, legally binding marriages on opposite coasts of the United States straight.
I mean, it is basically a breathtaking physical database for deception. Like a literal filing cabinet for a double life, just carried around on a daily basis.
Right. So today, we are diving deep into the sources on Anaïs Nin. And, if you recognize the name, you probably associate her with being this prolific 20th century diarist or maybe a pioneer of modern erotica.
Yeah, she's very famous for both of those things.
Right. But what really stands out in these sources isn't just her literary output. It's the sheer, I guess you call it, psychological architecture she built to hide her reality from the world.
Absolutely. I mean, she was someone who essentially turned her own psychology into her primary life's work.
I'm stuck on the logistics of that lie box, to be honest.
It's a lot to process.
It is, because I think about how exhausting it is today, just keeping like a personal email separate from a work email. Doing that in the analog era with actual physical human beings is staggering. How does a person even begin to compartmentalize their daily reality to such an extreme degree without just completely losing their mind?
Well, to understand that, you really have to look at how she managed dualities from a very, very early age.
Okay, so it started early.
Oh, absolutely. She harbored this desperate desire for domestic and financial stability, right? But simultaneously, she possessed a completely compulsive need for boundary-pushing artistic and sexual freedom.
So she essentially wanted both extremes.
Exactly. She refused to choose between the safety of a conventional life and the thrill of a bohemian one. So to have both, she constructed incredibly elaborate architectures to, house those contradictions.
It makes sense. I mean, marriage gave her an anchor eventually, but an anchor doesn't just cure childhood trauma overnight.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Let's look at where this need for control actually started, because her early years were remarkably unstable. She was born in 1903 in France, right, into this highly artistic household.
Right, a very creative environment.
Her father was a Cuban composer, and her mother was a classically trained singer, which, sounds incredibly romantic on paper.
It does, yeah. But the romance shattered very quickly.
Right.
When she was just 2 years old, her parents separated, and her father effectively abandoned the family.
Wow. At 2 years old.
Yeah. And this is really the defining wound that sets her entire psychological trajectory in motion. I mean, she would spend her whole life trying to either heal that abandonment or at least understand it.
And the fallout from that separation just sounds incredibly chaotic based on the sources. Her mother moves the family across Europe. They spend time in Barcelona, and eventually they cross the Atlantic to settle in New York City.
A completely transient childhood.
Exactly. And then she drops out of high school at 16 and starts working as an artist's model. But there was one detail from the sources that completely threw me.
Oh, the language thing.
Yes. She actually loses her ability to speak Spanish, the language of her ancestors, entirely.
Yeah, that linguistic shift is such a fascinating survival mechanism.
Right. How do you just forget a language?
Well, she's shedding layers of identity and adopting new ones just to navigate this constantly changing environment.
Yeah.
So by losing Spanish, but retaining French and, eventually mastering English, she's unconsciously choosing which parts of her past to carry forward and which parts to just bury.
That makes a lot of sense. It really shows how desperate she was for some solid ground. And I know she starts journaling around age 11, right?
Age 11, yes.
So I'll admit, my initial thought was to just dismiss a teenager's diary as, a place for venting typical angst. We all have them.
Right, the classic teenage diary.
Yeah, but for her, was it deeper than that?
Much deeper. I mean, think about being a child constantly crossing literal and metaphorical borders.
Right.
And you have a father who just vanished.
Right.
The diary became the one territory that actually belonged to her. It wasn't just a record of her day, it was literally the creation of a permanent self.
Oh, wow. So it was like a grounding mechanism.
Exactly. If she wrote it down, it couldn't abandon her.
That is so poignant. And I read something about how she divided her languages within those early diaries. How exactly did that work?
Oh, this is one of my favorite details.
Mhm.
She deliberately assigned different psychological functions to different languages.
What do you mean?
Well, she used French, which she considered the language of her heart, to process raw, vulnerable emotions. But she used English, which she learned later, strictly for her intellectual and analytical thoughts.
That is wild. She was literally compartmentalizing her own vocabulary to keep her thoughts and feelings from bleeding into each other.
Precisely. The diary was her psychological anchor long before she sought any kind of, traditional stability.
Which brings us to her pursuit of that traditional stability. At age 20, she marries Hugh Giller in Cuba.
Right.
He is an American banker. He represents financial security. They eventually relocate to Paris. So it seems like she gets the money and the safe harbor she was craving.
She does. But, financial security is great.
Yeah.
But it doesn't resolve a deeply fractured sense of self.
Yeah, the internal issues are still there.
Exactly. And Paris in the 1920s exposes her to a completely new problem. She realizes she has absolutely no idea how her own mind works, and she starts feeling stifled by the conventionality of her marriage.
So how does someone in 1920s Paris go about figuring out their own brain?
Well, you turn to the explosive new field of psychoanalysis.
Of course you do.
Yeah. She dives into this world so intensely. She starts studying under prominent figures like Otto Rank, who had been one of Freud's closest colleagues.
Okay, now Freud is all about repressed childhood trauma, right? Why did she gravitate toward Rank specifically?
Well, Rank actually broke away from Freud's strict focus on the past. Rank believed that neurosis wasn't just about repressed trauma. He saw it as a failure of creativity.
Oh, interesting. A failure of creativity.
He believed the key to healing was unlocking a person's creative will in the present moment.
Okay, I can see why she liked that.
Oh, for an aspiring writer who felt creatively blocked, Rank's theories were absolute catnip.
I'm trying to wrap my head around her approach to this therapy, though. It's almost like it's like she realized you can't learn how to swim by reading a manual on dry land.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, to understand her own subconscious, she felt she literally had to drown herself in the lives of the analysts teaching her, because the traditional doctor-patient boundaries absolutely disintegrate here.
They vanish entirely. Rank, along with another prominent analyst she studied under, both eventually become her lovers.
See, I'm struggling to understand how her husband never noticed anything, or why he would just accept his wife sleeping with her therapists.
It is baffling, isn't it? But Gayler was remarkably tolerant, or, perhaps willfully blind to her affairs.
Willfully blind makes more sense.
Yeah, because he genuinely wanted her to be happy and creatively fulfilled. And for her, intellectual curiosity and physical intimacy were just completely inseparable.
She couldn't just study it from a distance.
Right. She couldn't study psychological theories safely. She had to absorb them through lived experiences.
But with all this psychological chaos and boundary blurring with her therapists, was she actually getting any writing done?
The irony is that this chaos actually fueled her intensely. Rank specifically helped her bridge the gap between her raw, wordless intuitions and the written word.
So it worked.
It really did. It's during this intellectually vibrant period in 1932 that she publishes her first book.
Okay.
It was a critical study of the author D.H. Lawrence, and she wrote the entire thing in an astonishing 16 days.
16 days. I mean, that sounds like a manic episode disguised as productivity.
It really was an explosion of that creative will Rank talked about. But Rank wasn't her only muse during this time.
No.
No. This Parisian era is when she fully embraces the bohemian lifestyle, largely through her intensely complex relationship with the writer Henry Miller and his wife June.
Okay, yeah. The sources paint June Miller as an absolute force of nature.
Oh, June was the ultimate femme fatale. She was cunning, irresistible, and highly theatrical.
And she completely mesmerized Nin, right?
Completely. It wasn't just a crush, though. It sparked a profound identity crisis. She actually wrote in her unexpurgated diaries about feeling like she was literally becoming June.
Blurring the lines again.
Always. She was blurring the lines of her own identity and desire. The psychological immersion was just total.
It's fascinating, but that bohemian playground in Paris sounds like an incredibly specific bubble, and I imagine it couldn't survive what was happening in Europe at the time.
You're exactly right. It couldn't. By late summer of 1939, with World War II breaking out, residents from overseas are urged to leave France.
So they have to pack up.
Yeah. She and Geller flee back to the United States, landing in New York.
So suddenly, she is stripped of her intellectual playground and her bohemian identity. How does she cope with landing back in New York?
Well, she actually attempts to work as a psychoanalyst herself.
Wait, really?
Yes. She reconnects with Otto Rank in New York and starts seeing patients right next door to his practice.
I just can't picture someone with boundaries that fluid successfully managing other people's psychological crises.
And your instinct is spot on there. She abandoned the profession after only a few months.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
Think about how exhausting it is when a close friend dumps their heaviest problems on you.
Sure. Oh, it's draining.
Now imagine feeling an uncontrollable, empathetic urge to personally intervene in the lives of every single person who walks into your office.
She just couldn't separate herself.
Exactly. She possessed extreme empathy and simply couldn't maintain any clinical distance.
Well, giving up a profession like that, I have to imagine, leads to some financial strain.
Severe financial strain. The 1940s in New York were incredibly difficult for her and for Henry Miller, who had also relocated.
Right. So what did they do?
Well, to make ends meet, they take on a highly unusual commission. They begin writing erotica for an anonymous private collector at a rate of $1 per page.
$1 a page for commissioned smut.
Yep, $1.
That sounds incredibly degrading for someone who viewed herself as this serious, literary artist. Does
No.
she hate doing it?
Initially, yes, absolutely. She viewed the stories as extreme caricatures, like a financial joke.
But she kept doing it.
She did. And her approach to writing them ended up being revolutionary. Instead of focusing strictly on mechanical acts, which was very typical of male-written erotica at the time, she infused the stories with deep female psychology.
So she elevated it.
Exactly. She brought atmosphere and nuanced desire to the pages. These writings would later be published as groundbreaking works like Delta of Venus.
See, I wonder, was writing that commissioned erotica truly just a financial joke, or did it function as something deeper, like maybe a way for her to explore control in a safe space?
Ah, you've hit on the absolute core mechanism of her psyche there.
Really?
Yes. The erotica required her to construct highly compartmentalized, fictionalized worlds where she was the absolute author of the narrative.
Right, because she gets to play God on the page.
Exactly. She controlled every urge and outcome on the page, which shielded her from the messiness of real life.
That need for total narrative control completely explains what happens next in the sources.
The elevator ride.
The elevator ride. It's 1947. She is 44 years old, riding in an elevator in Manhattan, and she strikes up a conversation with a former actor named Rupert Pohl, and he is 16 years her junior.
And this chance meeting in an elevator sparks the most logistically complex phase of her entire life.
This is where it gets crazy.
It really does. She begins a relationship with Pohl and eventually travels with him to California. But keep in mind, she is still legally married to Hugh Gaylor back in New York.
Okay, please tell me how she manages this, because I can barely manage a shared digital calendar with my partner.
It's astounding.
In 1955, she illegally marries Rupert Pohl in a small town in Arizona, committing actual bigamy.
Yes, federal crime.
Keeler is in New York, Pohl is in Los Angeles. How does she keep them from finding out about each other?
Well, this brings us right back to the lie box in that massive purse we talked about. Managing this fiction was literally a full-time job.
I can't even imagine.
She maintained separate bank accounts with different names. She had doctors on both coasts, prescribing medication under different identities.
And what did she tell Keeler when she left?
When she was with Gaylor in New York, she claimed she needed to go on solitary writing retreats to Los Angeles. That was her excuse for the absences.
So what exactly went on those index cards in the lie box?
The cards meticulously tracked her lies.
Wow.
She recorded what she told Gaylor she was doing on a specific date, what address she was supposedly staying at, and what she simultaneously told Pohl.
She had to cross-reference her own life.
Exactly. She even routed mail through complicated forwarding systems so letters with New York postmarks wouldn't end up in Los Angeles, and vice versa.
That sounds absolutely agonizing.
He was exhausted.
I look at this and I just see a massive paradox. She goes to all these extremes affairs, 2 marriages, constant travel, just to achieve ultimate freedom.
Right.
But she ends up trapping herself in a logistical prison of her own making. The index cards, the lies, the constant fear of slipping up. It's like extreme freedom without boundaries, literally required building a cage just to maintain it.
That is a profound insight. The mental toll of managing that bicoastal trapeze was immense.
Did it ever end?
Well, she eventually had the marriage to Pol annulled in 1966.
Was the annulment a sudden crisis of conscience? Like, did the guilt finally get to her?
Not at all.
No.
No, it was strictly due to tax complications.
You're kidding. Taxes.
Taxes. Both men were attempting to claim her as a dependent on their tax returns.
Oh, that's a
A
problem.
huge problem. It threatened to expose the entire operation to the federal government. But despite the legal annulment, she and Pol remained together as a couple for the rest of her life.
Okay, we have to talk about the massive irony of her public persona during this specific period.
Oh, the 1960s, yes.
Right, because while she is secretly navigating the exhausting daily logistics of this double life, she suddenly becomes a very public icon of authenticity.
It is incredibly ironic.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, she finally begins publishing selections of her diaries, covering her life from 1931 onward.
And people love them.
The publication of these volumes transforms her into a massive cultural sensation.
The sources mention the 1960s feminist movement absolutely embraced her. They were completely captivated by her deeply introspective writings. Why did she resonate so strongly with that specific movement at that time?
She provided a specific type of heroine for that era. She was an emotionally articulate woman, unapologetically exploring her own internal desires.
Which was revolutionary for a lot of readers.
Exactly.
Huh.
But interestingly, she kept her distance from the political activism of the movement. She wasn't out marching for legislative change.
She kept it internal.
Right. She believed true revolution had to happen internally, through profound self-knowledge.
But the public thought they were reading her naked soul. They thought they were getting the ultimate, unvarnished truth. But the diaries she published in the 60s and 70s were heavily expurgated.
Highly curated. I mean, Giller, her first husband, was almost entirely edited out of those early volumes at his own request. She was presenting a very sanitized version of her bohemian life.
So she rides this wave of academic honors and public adulation throughout the 1970s. She becomes this popular lecturer at universities across the country. But she maintained control of that narrative right until the very end, didn't she?
She absolutely did. In 1974, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. She battled the disease fiercely for 2 years, undergoing numerous surgeries, radiation, and chemotherapy.
So sad.
Yeah. And she ultimately passed away in Los Angeles in 1977.
Her body was cremated, and her ashes were scattered in Santa Monica Bay. And there is a detail from the sources that really stuck with me. When Hugh Giller died years later in 1985, his ashes were scattered in that exact same cove.
It brings a strange sense of closure to their immensely complicated relationship. But her death was not the end of her story.
No, it really wasn't.
In fact, it was the catalyst for a massive historical revision of her life. Rupert Pol, who she had named as her literary executor, he actually waited until after Giller passed away to make his move.
And that is when the real shockwaves hit. Pol begins releasing her unexpurgated, completely uncensored diaries.
These new volumes finally revealed everything she had hidden from her adoring public.
Everything.
They detailed the bicoastal bigamy. They detailed the intense affairs with her psychoanalysts and with Henry Miller.
They also revealed deeply controversial, incredibly graphic truths, including a brief, adult, incestuous sexual encounter with her estranged father in the 1930s.
Yeah, that was a massive revelation.
It completely upended her legacy and shocked the literary world. Do you think she knew this was going to happen? Did she essentially act as her own ultimate PR manager?
She absolutely did. She masterfully curated her own myth.
Oh, so.
Well, she gave the 1960s public the inspirational, introspective figure they needed at that precise cultural moment. That secured her fame.
So she released the safe version while she was alive to get the adulation, knowing full well the explosive truth was waiting in the wings.
Exactly. By preserving those uncensored archives and trusting Pol to release them posthumously, she ensured that her complete, flawed, messy, and radically boundary-pushing humanity would ultimately define her historical legacy.
She wanted the whole truth out there eventually.
Right. She refused to be remembered as a sanitized saint. She demanded to be remembered as a complex, fully realized human being, even if she knew it would take decades for the world to be ready to process it.
When you look at the incredible trajectory of this life, from a displaced, fatherless child moving across oceans to a literary icon who quite literally lived multiple lifetimes simultaneously, you see someone who turned her own trauma and desires into just a sprawling work of art.
She built architectures, you know, trilingual diaries, groundbreaking erotica, even elaborate dual marriages, all to house the multitudes within her. It's a testament to the sheer force of human will required to author one's own existence.
Which brings us right back to that massive purse and the index card.
The famous lie box.
Exactly. We might not carry around a physical box of lies to manage bicoastal marriages today. But I mean, think about how we operate now. We have carefully curated social media feeds displaying our highlight reel.
Oh, absolutely.
We have polished professional profiles on one app and entirely different personas in our private group chats. We project one version of ourselves to our families and a completely different version to our closest friends.
We all do it to some extent.
Right. So are we all just carrying around a digital version of that lie box in our pockets? It
Yeah.
really leaves you wondering, what is the actual difference between the sanitized, expurgated version of the life you present to the public and the unvarnished, uncensored diary of who you truly are?